Hello, my name is Jen. Today, let's crochet the Queen's Cuffs. These can be worn as an embellishment with your favorite blouse or sweater. They make wonderful wrist warmers with your favorite coat or jacket. If you love the styles of either Lolita or Coquette, dress them up with ribbons and bows and make them your own. Let's get a little fancy and crochet the Queen's Cuffs. For this project, I'm using DK weight yarn. Today I'll be using Stylecraft, but you can use your favorite DK. You will also need some 1/4 inch or 6mm elastic cord and a matching needle and thread. We'll be using some fray check to keep our cut elastic from fraying. You will need a measuring tape, and I'm also going to be using a ruler and a pencil, but those are optional. For this project, we're using a 3.75mm crochet hook. I've got a yarn needle, a pair of scissors, and I almost forgot, a handful of stitch markers. In the description below, I have provided some helpful links to get you started. Speaking of getting started, the very first thing we need to do is measure our wrist. You can see that my right wrist measures at 6.5 inches. Once you have your wrist measurement, we're going to cut 3 lengths of elastic that are 1 inch or approximately 2.5 centimeters greater or longer than your wrist measurement. Since my wrist was 6.5 inches, I'm actually cutting a piece of elastic that is 7.5 inches long. You can see that I'm just using my pencil to mark the place on the elastic where I want to make my cut. If you don't have a measuring tape, use a piece of yarn to measure the distance around your wrist and then measure that length with your ruler. Once I've cut my first piece of elastic, I'm going to go ahead and double check and make sure I'm happy with that measurement. And then I'm going to use my first piece of elastic to cut 2 more pieces. So I'll have a total of 3 pieces of elastic prepared for my right wrist. I'm just going to zip through this, but once I have my 3 pieces of elastic cut, then I'm going to go ahead and add some no fray to both ends of the elastic so that it doesn't unravel. I'm using the back of a clipboard just to protect my table, and I will also need to allow this no fray some time to dry. While that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and measure my left wrist. Your wrists might be the same size. Sometimes our dominant and non-dominant sides can be a little bit different. I happen to break my left wrist, so I know for a fact that it's just a little bit bigger around than my right wrist. I've got some hardware in there. So once again, we're going to cut 3 lengths of elastic that are 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters longer than the distance around our wrist. For me, this is going to be 7.75 inches. And then I'm just using that first cut piece of elastic to cut 2 more. This time I get a little more clever with my no fray and do all 3 lengths at a time. I will set these aside to dry just like the ones for the right wrist. And because my wrists are 2 different sizes, I'm going to go ahead and mark the elastics for my left wrist just so I don't accidentally mix them up. Once our no fray is dry, we're going to sew each piece of elastic together to form a ring. If you happen to have a sewing machine set up, you could just zip these through your sewing machine. I actually sort of enjoy a little hand sewing, so even though I do have a sewing machine, I'm going to go ahead and sew these by hand. You can see that I've threaded my needle and I've doubled up the thread and tied a little knot at the end, and I'm using my scissors to cut off the little bit of excess thread. Now we can take our first piece of elastic and I'm going to overlap the ends. Make sure you don't have a twist in your elastic, but I'm overlapping the ends by about 1/4 inch. Then I'm going from the underside to the top and drawing the thread through. and then I'm passing it back through at a diagonal. I'll show you in just a second here. You can see that I have formed a little diagonal slash with my thread. I'm going to go back up from the bottom side, back up to the top in the upper right hand corner, and then I'm going to pass it back through to the back side in the lower left hand corner. This is going to create an X shape on the elastic, and it's just really going to help keep all of those fibers in place and from fraying and hold the two ends of elastic together. Here's my X, and just for extra safe measure, I'm going to go over my X one more time before I knot my thread. I am all about making sure things are very secure, so you will see that when I knot my thread, I give it a total of 3 knots. Just insert your needle under a piece of thread on the back, and then before you pull it all the way through, insert your needle through that loop and then pull the thread through. Do this 2 or 3 times to create a knot, and then you can cut off that excess thread. You can see that the overlap of my elastic is right about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters. And now I need to repeat this process for the other 5 pieces of elastic. Now that we've prepared our materials, we need to do one more quick prep before we commence crocheting. Begin by measuring off 3 yards or 2.75 meters of yarn and making a butterfly. This is going to reduce the number of loose ends that we have to weave in at the end of our project. To make a butterfly, wrap this yardage around 4 fingers and then slip it off your hand and wrap the middle a few times. I use a finger to hold the yarn away from the bundle and then slip the very last tail end underneath that loop. This creates a small butterfly shape that we'll be able to draw yarn from when we need it at a future step. At long last, it's time to grab your crochet hook and begin crocheting. You can see that the working yarn is to the left and the butterfly is to the right, and I'm going to go ahead and join my hook to the yarn with a slip knot. Our project starts with a foundation single crochet. We are using this stitch for the stretch that it offers. If you have not worked a foundation single crochet before, I have a complete tutorial linked for you in the description below. I have slowed down the first 2 stitches because I know there are a lot of folks who will be able to pick it up just by looking at the visuals, but I really do emphasize using this stitch for this project because we want a foundation row that will be able to stretch easily over our hand. Let's talk for just a moment about how many stitches to make. You will need to make a foundation single crochet row that has a multiple of 6 stitches so that when you hold the first and last stitch together to form a ring, you can easily stretch it over your hand. We will look at this a little more closely in just a minute. To give you a guide, 30 stitches works really well for my sized wrist, and so you will probably be using a multiple of 6 that is either 24 stitches for people with wrists about an inch smaller than mine, 30 stitches if your wrist is very similar in size to mine, or 36 stitches if your wrist is a little bit larger, maybe a little over 7 inches. So that's the range we're working within, multiples of 6, 24, 30, 36. If you're getting quite a few more stitches than that, then your foundation single crochet chain might be a little bit on the tight side. It could be helpful to increase your hook size by using a 4mm or a 4.5mm. To give you an additional guide, every 4 stitches should measure approximately 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters in length. Before I measure, I'm double checking my stitch count to make sure I have 30 stitches. When I hold this to my ruler, you'll see that 30 stitches is right around 7 inches. This is ½ an inch longer than the size of my wrist, and that's going to work great. And you can see there is a lot of stretch in a foundation single crochet. When I hold the beginning and end together, I can easily slip this over my hand. It's okay if it's not a tight fit. That's what our elastic is for. Once again, you can see for about every 4 foundation single crochet stitches, I have about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters in length. There is a little wiggle room, but please take the time you need to adjust your gauge and make sure that you're starting off with a foundation single crochet row that is just right for you. I also wanted to take just a quick moment to show you that at this point our elastics have about ½ an inch of give. But as you can see, once they're crocheted into the fabric, you should have a cuff that fits nice and close to your wrist without being too tight. I know that I have just given you a lot of information. Please pause or rewind when you need to. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. Guess what? We finally made it to round 1. And to create round 1, we're simply going to insert our hook back into that last loop of our foundation single crochet and slip stitch to the first stitch. Let me bring you a little bit closer. So you just insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch and the loop on your hook. So now we've joined the first and last stitch together. This turns our foundation single crochet chain into a loop, and from now on we'll be working in the round. Chain 1, and now we're ready for round 2. Round 2 begins by working a ½ double crochet in the same stitch, and then mark this stitch as the first stitch of the round. It might seem a little odd that we only chained 1, but we're really looking to downplay the seam on our cuffs. After working this stitch, we're going to work 1 ½ double crochet in each stitch around. You yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. You'll continue this all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and time travel to the end of round 2, and I'm just finishing up my last couple of stitches here. After you work your last ½ double crochet, you're going to complete this round by slip stitching to the first stitch and then chaining 1. Round 3 begins in exactly the same way. We're going to work a ½ double crochet into the same stitch and then mark this as the first stitch of the round. Next, we're going to work 1 ½ double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. For round 3, we are simply working 1 ½ double crochet into each stitch around, just as we did for round 2. The difference is we're marking the first stitch in each group of 6, and these stitch markers will guide us as we enter round number 4. We have just completed the first 6 stitches of the round, and now we begin our repeating pattern. You're going to ½ double crochet in the next stitch and then mark that stitch, and then you'll ½ double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Repeat this pattern all the way around. I am just speeding us up, and before you know it, we're at the end of round 3, and we'll finish this round by slip stitching to the first stitch and chaining 1. Once again, this is just a round of half double crochet with 1 stitch marker for every multiple of 6 stitches. Before we head into round number 4, I want to mark one more stitch. I actually want us to mark the post of the first stitch 2 rounds below. So if you look at our first stitch marker, and you can see that this stitch is worked into this one right here, right below, and we're actually going to put a stitch marker around the post of that stitch. If you don't have stitch markers, fold a short piece of yarn in half and then insert your hook through the stitch or the post. Use the fold as your yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over with both of those tail ends and pull it through that loop. That gives you a simple little slip knot. It's just like working a latch hook if you've ever done a project like that, and then you can pull them right off when you're done with those stitch markers. With all of our stitch markers, or guides if you will, in place, we can add our first piece of elastic. Draw it up over the butterfly and the bottom of the cuff. It can feel a little bit awkward because the circumference of the elastic will not be the same as your crochet, but everything will fall into place. In round 4, we're going to be enclosing our first piece of elastic. Begin by working a yarn over and then insert your hook from front to back around the post of that stitch we marked 2 rounds below. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. You can take that stitch marker out, and then we complete this stitch by inserting your hook into the first stitch of this round, making sure that your working yarn is to the right of the hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through the 3 remaining loops on your hook. I decided to call this the guard stitch. We are making the Queen's Cuffs after all, so I thought it only fitting that the guards protect the elastic. So let's carry on and let me show you this guard stitch a couple more times. We will continue round 4 with this repeating pattern. You'll yarn over, insert your hook from front to back around the post of the next stitch 2 rounds below, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then working over that elastic and with your working yarn to the right of your hook, insert your hook into the next stitch of the current round. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the remaining 3 loops on your hook, and then back to the beginning of that repeat. You're going to continue this all the way around, and because you're working around the elastic and into stitches both below and your current round, I'm hoping you'll find, as I do, that these stitch markers just help you keep your stitch count. You'll know that you're going to encounter another stitch marker from the previous round every 6 stitches. So if for some reason you get off and maybe you accidentally put 2 stitches in 1 stitch, you'll find it before you get to the end of the round. So they're just kind of protecting you from making a mistake and having to go back and rework a big part of this round. Let's go ahead and talk through another stitch. So you yarn over, you insert your hook around the post of the next stitch 2 rounds down, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then you go back into the next stitch of the current round, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. You may need to stop occasionally and adjust the elastic and just kind of get it where you need it to be to work these stitches, but just take your time and take it 1 stitch at a time. You can see we've just completed our first 6 stitches, and now we can carry on going back to the beginning of that repeat. We're going to be working this guard stitch all the way around, enclosing our first piece of elastic into our fabric, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of round 4. Here we are at the end of the round. I'm just working my last couple of stitches. Before I slip stitch to the first stitch, I'm going to take a moment and count my stitches. It's a really good idea when you're working on a project like this one that has a little bit more going on to just occasionally check your stitch count, because with this pattern, it really does matter to have an accurate stitch count at the end of each round. Satisfied with my stitch count, I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to the first stitch and chain 1. I'm just going to place a stitch marker in my loop so we can take a closer look at the work. Now, it might seem a little odd that there's an opening where you can see the elastic, and that is actually fine because, believe it or not, right now we are actually working with the wrong side of the cuffs facing us, so you will not see this in the finished cuff. What I don't like is that the part of elastic that ended up in that little window happens to be the part that I sewed, so I'm just using my crochet hook to adjust the elastic just a little. Okay, much better. I'm much happier now. Once again, we are currently looking at the wrong side, but you can see that when we flip it over, the right side is going to look nice and clean. For rounds 5 through 10, you're going to repeat rounds 2 through 4 respectively. You can pause the video here. I've written the pattern for these 3 rows right here for your convenience. By the end of round 10, you'll have all 3 of your elastics in place. Here is how the cuff looks at the end of round 10, and we have just one more round to go before we can turn our work right side out. Round 11 begins by working a half double crochet in the same stitch, and then we're going to go ahead and mark this as the first stitch of the round. And then we're going to work a second half double crochet in that same stitch. So the first stitch of this round gets 2 half double crochets. Now we're going to work a half double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. Here's our last one of those, and now we get to start our repeating pattern. You're going to work 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, and then work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. Repeat this pattern all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 11. Here we are finishing up the round. Round 11 increases our stitch count by 1 multiple of 6. You can see I'm working my slip stitch to the first stitch, and we're going to stop right there and place a stitch marker in that loop. Now we can flip our work right side out. You're going to turn it so that the bottom comes up through the top, and go ahead and pass that butterfly through as well. And now you can turn your work over and see the right side of your cuff. For just a minute, we are going to pause with the working yarn, and we're going to use the yarn from the butterfly that we reserved at the beginning of the project. And we're going to use this yarn to finish up this bottom edge of the cuff. We're going to start by marking the first and last stitch of our foundation single crochet row, and you can count from stitch marker to stitch marker to ensure that you have the correct number of stitches. Insert your hook through the stitch marked by the stitch marker on the right, and then yarn over and draw through that beginning tail. And now, working into that stitch marked by the stitch marker on the left, we're going to work 1 single crochet. Go ahead and mark this single crochet as the first stitch of this round and remove the other stitch marker. Into this same stitch, you're going to work 2 more single crochets. So the first stitch of this round will have a total of 3 single crochets. Next, you're going to work a single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. While crocheting this round, be careful to only insert your hook under the top 2 threads of each stitch. Here's our 4th one, and now we start our repeating pattern for this round. You're going to work 3 single crochets into the next stitch, and then you're going to work a single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. You'll go back to the beginning of the repeat, and you'll repeat this pattern all the way around. Here we are working on our very last repeat. And after working our last single crochet, we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch, and then we can go ahead and elongate that loop on our hook, pull the butterfly through, and pull to close this final slip knot. Now we can go ahead and weave in this loose end on the wrong side of our work. I'm going to go ahead and cut off some of this excess. And now I can thread my yarn needle and start my weaving. Whenever I'm weaving in my loose ends, I always make 3 passes with the needle, and this will give you a very secure finish. Once you're done, you can go ahead and cut off any excess yarn, and now we're going to rejoin our hook to that last loop from round 11. Here we are on round 12, and you can see that with the wrong side facing, I inserted my hook back into the marked loop from round 11, and then I turned my work so that the working yarn was behind the fabric. Next, I'll elongate the loop on my hook and single crochet in the next stitch. Then I'm going to mark that stitch as the first stitch of the round and work 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So the first stitch of round 12 will have a total of 3 single crochets, and then I'm going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. Let's take a quick look at the beginning of round 12. So we have our first stitch that's marked, and then there's 2 more single crochets in that same stitch, and then a single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Now we can continue with round 12 with this repeating pattern. We're going to work 3 single crochets in the next stitch, and then single crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. You'll repeat this pattern all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end of round 12. Here I am finishing up that last repeat from round 12. After your last stitch, you're going to slip stitch to the first stitch, and then you're also going to slip stitch in the next stitch. And that's going to bring us to the middle stitch of that 3 single crochet group. Round 13 begins by elongating the loop on your hook just a little and then working a single crochet in the same stitch. Mark this single crochet as the first stitch of round 13, and then we're going to chain 3, and now we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, and into the next stitch you're going to work a single crochet, chain 3, and then another single crochet in that same stitch. Continue by chaining 3, skipping the next 3 stitches, and then work a single crochet in the next stitch. I'm going to pause right here so we can have a look at our work. Here's our single crochet that we started with, our chain 3, and then our little single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, the next chain 3, and we just worked a single crochet which should fall directly in the middle of the 3 single crochet group from the previous round. Returning to our pattern, we're going to chain 3, skip 3 stitches, into the next stitch we're going to single crochet, chain 3, and then single crochet back in that same stitch. We're going to chain 3 and skip the next 3 stitches, and then we're back to the beginning of that repeat. Here I am working the last repeat of round 13. With a chain 3, we skip the last 3 stitches, and we end with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. I'm just going to remove the stitch marker and take a quick look at our work. It's truly in this round, round 13, where we start to see the lace detailing coming into our cuffs. Let's go ahead and rejoin our hook and head into the next round. Round 14 begins by chaining 5. And now we're going to work a double treble together in the same stitch. Yarn over 3 times, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times until there are 2 loops remaining. Yarn over 3 times, insert your hook back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times until there are 3 loops remaining, yarn over and pull through those 3 loops. We have just created our first leaf shape, and now we're going to chain 9 and work a double treble 3 together back in that same stitch. To do so, we're going to yarn over 3 times, insert our hook back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, once, twice, and a 3rd time. We've got 2 loops remaining. We're going to yarn over 3 times, insert our hook back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times, and now we have 3 loops on our hook, and we do it one more time. Yarn over 3 times, insert our hook into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 times, and then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on your hook. So we have a leaf, a chain 9, and another leaf all worked into that same stitch. Now we begin our repeating pattern for round 14. We're going to skip over the next 2 chain 3 spaces and the shape in between them and work a double treble 3 together in the next stitch. It will be that standalone single crochet from the previous round. So I have just worked my first double treble, stopping when I have 2 loops left on my hook, and then my second one, stopping when there are 3 loops left on my hook, and the third one. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, until we have 4 loops left on our hook, yarn over, and pull through all 4 loops. That double treble 3 together creates our leaf, and then we chain 9, and then we do it all over again. We work a double treble 3 together back in that same stitch. So each of these repeats gives us a shape that is a leaf, a chain 9, and another leaf in the same stitch. And then we'll go back to the beginning of the repeat, skipping the next 2 chain 3 spaces and that shape in between them, and working our next double treble 3 together in the next stitch. I'm going to go ahead and work this shape for you one more time before I take us to the end of round 14. I love this row because it's really where our cuff starts to open up and flare out. I've spent a little more time demonstrating, and I hope you're feeling comfortable with this stitch pattern before I travel us onward to the end of this round. I just finished my last double treble 3 together, and now you can see that we're going to skip over the last 2 chain 3 spaces, and we'll finish by working a slip stitch into the top of our first double treble group. I just can't help myself. I'm going to protect our loop and our stitches with a stitch marker, and then let's just have a look at this round. So you have these open spaces now, giving you that lacier feel, the shape of the leaves, that little decoration of the round below, almost like an oversized picot. And now we can join our hook back into that loop and work on round 15. For round 15, we're going to elongate the loop on our hook just a little bit and then work a single crochet in that same stitch. Go ahead and mark this as the first stitch of our round. And then we're going to continue by working 9 single crochets around our chain 9. Insert your hook under the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So instead of working into a stitch, we're just working around the chain, and we're going to do so with a total of 9 single crochets. So we've got 1 single crochet for each chain. Okay, I'm just finishing up my 9th single crochet, and we can have a look and see how nice that looks. And now we've come to our 2 double treble 3 together stitches, and we're going to join these by working a single crochet 2 together over these next 2 stitches. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. This is how our repeating pattern for round 15 begins, and it continues by working 9 single crochets around the next chain. So just as we did before, you'll insert your hook under the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. Once you complete those 9 single crochets, you're going to go back to the beginning of the repeat with a single crochet 2 together. And then once again, you'll work 9 single crochets around the next chain. I've gone ahead and taken us to the end of round 15, and I've just finished up my last repeat. We're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the first stitch and then move on to our very last round. So we have just one more round to go, round 16. We'll begin by elongating the loop on our hook just a little bit and single crocheting in the same stitch. Mark this stitch as the first stitch of round 16. And now you're going to chain 3 and single crochet in that same stitch. This will feel familiar because this is the same stitch combination that we worked in round 13. Now we're going to be working in the back loops only. So in the back loop only, single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. Continuing to work in the back loop only, you're going to work 3 single crochets in the next stitch. This is going to give us our point. And now we're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, once again in the back loop only. So when we're working across the 9 single crochets that we worked onto that chain, we're always going to be working in the back loops. Now we're going to continue round 16 with the following repeating pattern. You're going to work a single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, all in the next stitch, and then back loop only across the next 9 stitches. You're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and then 3 single crochets in the back loop only of the next stitch, and then a single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. Then you'll go back to the beginning of this repeat and work this repeat all the way around. Here we are finishing up round 16, and this round ends by working a slip stitch to the first stitch. I just went ahead and cut my working yarn. I'm taking that stitch marker out of my way. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull it through the loop on your hook. Then you can go ahead and pull that cut working yarn through the final loop to create a slip knot. Now there's nothing left to do but to weave in this final loose end. Of course, now it's time to go back and repeat this process for your left cuff. As you saw earlier, I have already made my left cuff, so there's nothing left for me to do but to try them on for you. You can see that the seam is extremely subtle. I really love the way they look paired with a sweater. It's just that little bit of unexpected, almost like wrist jewelry sticking out from beneath the sweater. If you're someone who enjoys Lolita or Coquette fashion, I think it would be so much fun to really embellish these. I can imagine them with ribbons and bows, decorative buttons, and really styling them to match an outfit. You know, I had to make more than one pair, so I also made them up in this pretty oatmeal color. They're just so soft and feminine looking. I love the detail of the points around the wrist that are echoing those points at the end of the cuffs. I also made a pair in worsted weight yarn, still using the same size crochet hook. These are a little bit thicker, a little bit warmer, so if you're looking for wrist warmers, this is a nice option. You can see that the cuffs fit nicely without being too tight. I hope you enjoyed the project today. I have to say, I can't wait for the weather to get just a little bit colder so I can start to wear my Queen's cuffs. Please hit like and subscribe. I post new tutorials on Tuesdays, and I can't wait to share more of my designs with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.